Hey, y'all, and welcome back to Finding Your Summit, all about people overcoming adversity and finding their way. My name is Mark Pattison, former NFL player, now climbing the 7 summits. I've got Everest coming up, and welcome to another amazing pod. Okay, here is the quote of the week. If something you tried doesn't work and the door slams shut, that's okay. Just never, ever stop trying. And then I think really sums things up for the guest this week, Lisa Odenweller. She is somebody I actually had in the pod. I should say I recorded this about a year ago, and it just wasn't right. And she felt it, I felt it, and so we came back and we redid it. And she's so authentic, and she's so just genuine that it was really a heart-warming story about what she's been through. And actually, I've been through some of these same things, and that she is the founder of Beaming Organic Superfood Cafes. I think there were up to about 11 of these things around Southern California. And essentially, you'd walk in and everything was organic and gluten-free. I've actually eaten there a few times. And the smoothies and the gluten-free muffins and scones and all these other different products. And so she had originally, when she founded this, she had an investor base, and ultimately she lost support of that base. And she found herself on the outside, and that anytime you lose something that you built so hard with all your passion and everything else to really dig in and make it happen, and then essentially you get tossed out, it's just not a great feeling. That happened to me essentially with one of my companies, Front Porch Classics. So anyways, she has completely rebounded. She's come back. She's come back strong. And the beauty about all this is that she is continued down the same road by founding a new company called Chroma, Kroma. And essentially you can go on and get these super lattes, but again, around the whole world of superfoods with matcha, maca, turmeric, collagen, these other things. And so at the end of the day, what they do is they give you more energy and vitality and positivity. And, we all need that. So stay tuned for that on the pod. Certainly somebody overcoming adversity and has found her way. So proud of her. So she'll be on in just a second. And always, please make sure to check out my website, markpattisonnfl.com. I've got a bunch of cool stuff going on. I have Mount Everest now coming up in less than 11 months, so I continue to train, and then I will ramp up and ramp down, and then seriously ramp up, and so jacked to be up in Nepal next April. Right now, it's a climbing season, and so fingers crossed for the guys up there that they make it, and they make it with safe passage. And if you haven't done so already, please go in and rate and review on my podcast. And it really helps, okay? So we need that. So also, last thing is we have a new sponsor on the pod, Cascade Mountain Tech. They're super cool. There's more about them during the pod. So stand by for that. And on that note, let's go listen to Lisa. Here we go. Hey, everybody, it's Mark Pattison. I'm back again with another phenomenal episode of Finding Your Summit, all about people overcoming adversity and finding their way. And this gal, I'm not quite sure how I met her, but it was about a year or two ago. And she seemed like she had everything going on in her life. And then she kind of fell off a little bit of a cliff. And then she has recovered. This story is about redemption, and I love it. I love what she's up to. So many of her kind of whole life's missions are about what I'm up to as well. And so I believe in so much of what she does. Her name is Lisa Odenweller. Lisa, how are you doing?
Oh, Mark, I am fantastic. And thank you for such a sweet intro. And I don't know how we met either, but I know that when we met, we knew that we were kindred spirits that needed to be friends and do cool stuff in the world. So here we are.
Yeah, no, here we are. So I know that we're going to kind of have to unpack this whole story, and for the listener, kind of stay tuned, because this is your classic CEO. And by the way, I've got a lot of this my own story, which Lisa is going to share. I've been through this whole mess and picking myself back up and reinventing myself, all these things as well. So Lisa, I'm in the same boat. But when we originally met a couple of years ago, it was in Santa Monica. And, you had invited me into one of your shops called Beaming Organic Superfood. And of course, it was a cafe. I had no idea what this was. It was right off Montana. And so I met you down there, and I walked into this amazing, like almost mini Whole Foods type of cafe where you could order all these just fantastic, super healthy foods. And there they were right in front of me having these smoothies and cookies and this and that. And it was really an amazing experience. And so I want to get into first, like how you came up with this whole beaming idea, and then we'll transition through that and get into what you're doing now. But that was kind of the first time that I met you.
Yeah, we did. We met at the Beaming Santa Monica location. And, it's the journey to Beaming was really a beautiful one in that I think I learned along the way that it was something I was building my whole life and didn't know it. And, as a little girl, and as Mark was describing, it is this ultra healthy organic superfood cafe, with superfood smoothies and juices and gluten-free baked goods and salads. And one of the things that I'm so passionate about is food and culinary, but I love making healthy taste amazing. And so even since I was a little kid, I was trying to figure out how to make a delicious chocolate chip cookie healthy. And, was making you'll appreciate this, Mark, but I was making all the cookies for the football players in high school. And I decided that I needed to figure out how to make a healthy one because I was eating all the dough. And, so, I was making superfood smoothies when I don't even know if we knew what superfoods were, but I was always blending something in the blender. So it's kind of one of those great stories where so often in life, the signs of what we're meant to do came very early, and it just sometimes takes us longer to figure it out. And
so let me ask you this question then. So why was that? I mean, look, I'm out on the play field throwing the football around, and I'm not saying this is all you did, but certainly you had an interest. I mean, most kids that young don't have a interest in making healthy foods. And again, I want to also get the definition of what a superfood is, because I've had Laird Hamilton on the show. They're a sponsor of the podcast. And just, when we throw that term around, what is that? But let's go back to when you're a kid, when most people would have like Twinkies and Snicker bars and things like that. And your mind is thinking a whole different way.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in a family where we weren't allowed to have Snickers and Twinkies and Fruit Loops. And so, the kids didn't want to come to my house after school because we didn't have all the junk. So it was kind of ingrained in me since I was little. And I was also a latchkey kid. So I'd come home from school and have to figure out how to entertain myself. So I exercised every day when I came home, because what else was I going to do? We didn't have cell phones and all these crazy video games. So being healthy was something that was in me, and it was part of, I think, my DNA, and certainly part of my upbringing. And I also have always been very culinary inspired and loved good food. And so I was always trying to figure out I like to eat. And I thought, well, I want to take care of myself. I think there's a bigger part, though, an answer to your question, though, that really led me to Beaming. And that was that I always had this fear of like getting sick, not necessarily the flu, but getting cancer, getting something that was life-threatening. And I wanted to feel empowered. I wanted to feel like I had control over my health. And I'm a little bit of a control freak anyway. And so it's no wonder that I wanted to be able to control my health. But I had this underlying fear, like, what if you go to the doctor and they tell you something you don't want to hear? And it was through kind of just years of, being healthy and friends asking, oh, what do you eat and how do you exercise? And it was always something that I was doing, but not necessarily something that I was teaching. And through a course of many different careers, working in the software industry, having an interior design company, having a jewelry company, and dabbling and playing in lots of different things, there was a point in my life in my mid-30s where I was starting to not feel as great, starting to have those kind of the brain fog, hormone issues, body aches and pains, just inflammation in general, and just not feeling as good. And we can chalk some of that up to getting older, but I felt like there was something deeper for me to explore. And as I was going to the doctor, of course, the first thing they wanted to do was give me medication. Mm-hmm. And that for me didn't feel right. And so I wanted to understand, well, what else can I do besides just take a pill? Now, I should also mention at the same time, I'm a mom of 3 kids. I was married at the time. And my daughter had been on medications for ADD for about 3 years. And I hate it. And it really bothered me that she was on this medication. And once again, I was just questioning, like, does she really have to be on this? Is there something else I can do? And the ADD medication, while it was helping her focus, it was causing mood disorders. So the next thing you know, she's on a mood medication to help stabilize her moods, which was then making her almost catatonic, where our daughter was like, had no zest in life, right? So she's 9, 10, 11, 12 years old. And sure, she can focus in school, but where did my kid go? So it was a combination of that. My husband, he was also experiencing, the inflammation, the other things. So it was kind of a series of those events that led me to say, what can I do? How can I take health into my own hands? So fast forward, I had left all the different businesses I had started. I was in kind of an interpersonal discovery time. I'd gone to life coaching school, and I was trying to figure out what I was going to do next. And I was at an event in New York, and a woman by the name of Chris Carr spoke. Many of you probably have heard of her and know her story, but she's a cancer survivor. Her story is very powerful, and she really has kind of committed her life work to talking about food as medicine. And her biggest message is that we have responsibility to take control of our health. And it starts with what you eat, drink, and think. And hearing her was so powerful for me in so many ways, because I thought, okay, she gets it. She knows something that I need to know. And as she was speaking at this event, I looked around the room, and she's very funny and witty and charming, and she's just hilarious. She's very captivating. And I looked around the room, and I saw the energy of the room just lifting, and the vibration of the room was lifting. And I thought, my God, like everyone is just like right there with her. And I looked at my girlfriend and I said, my God, that woman is beaming. And that subsequently became the name of my company, because that her energy was contagious. It was so powerful that it was raising the vibration of everyone else. And I thought, we want what she has. We want that zest for life and that inner health and beauty. And so that really set me on a course. This was about 9 years ago, to really dive deep into food as medicine. And I became obsessed. And I became obsessed with like reading everything I could, making these healthy foods, traveling the country, trying everything I could, from, going to every juice bar, smoothie bar, vegan cafe, non-vegan cafe, but anywhere I could.
Go.
So we were in this movement of, many of you probably were doing juice cleansing, and kind of during this water fasting master cleanse, juice cleansing. And we were really starting, like green juice became the end thing. And so I really started to kind of wanting to understand, what is this cleansing thing that we're doing? And what is it really doing for us? And is that the best way for us to really to thrive? Are we really learning from just drinking juice all day for multiple days on end? And so I started to just really, I went to different cleansing spas, and then I brought it home, and I started to make tweaks and changes into my diet and my kids' diet and my husband. And in a very quick amount of time, and by the way, we were, like I said, we were the healthy family, right? So all of a sudden now I was like, well, wait a second. We didn't realize, and again, humor me for a moment, because I think we've come a long way in 8, 9 years, which is incredible how fast this is happening in this health movement. But at the time, whole grain goldfish, because it said whole grain, seemed like a good thing to give to my kids. Wheat thins, because it says wheat, seemed like it would be good. The kids, of course, loved tons and tons of pasta. So as I started to understand the chemicals in so many of our food, and starting to read labels and looking at the stuff that we don't really pay attention to, and just because it says organic or all natural or whole grain doesn't mean it's good for us. So it woke me up. And so as I started to make these changes in my family's diet and in mine, all of a sudden, it's like I was feeling much better. My runs were stronger. My brain was clear. Inflammation was going down. Hormones were balancing. Same with my husband. But what was most profound is what happened with my daughter. And in a couple of weeks, in taking out the inflammatory triggers, which are kind of the obvious, but just to kind of make them even more obvious. So wheat, so any kind of gluten and wheat, dairy, sugar, processed foods, too much meat, alcohol, too much caffeine, any of those kinds of things are inflammatory triggers, right? Well, if you have any type of brain sensitivity, ADD or other, it actually creates even more inflammation in the brain. So all of a sudden I started to realize, wait a second, if I remove these things from my daughter's diet, how will it affect her brain? And within a couple of weeks of taking all of those inflammatory triggers, she came off of all of her medication.
Wow.
And that for me was the moment of truth that I had to share this information. And it's the fact that in Western medicine, not once were we ever asked, like, let's test her. Let's do a food sensitivity. Let's remove the triggers that could be causing this kind of inflammation in the brain that's affecting her ability. And this is true for anyone with ADD. So I encourage anyone who is listening to this that this may resonate for is that there are so many things that we can do that are just really comes down to the basics of the food that we're eating and becoming more mindful.
Yeah, no. Okay, so let me go back on this just a minute. So one of the things that really resonates with me is this whole notion about going to physicians, and what they recommend is a pill. And we've been dealing with this for a long time. I've got many of my buddies who are physicians, and I think there's a place, obviously, for physicians. They're brilliant. They, broken arm or other things that need to be fixed. They're great. It's very objective. But when it gets more into the subjective, these foods, the way that they are infiltrating your body and creating, different havoc in different ways, which many people don't know, it just becomes a mystery and causes a lot of ailments. Now, my daughter is now 20. She goes to the University of Arizona, and she's had a form of epilepsy since she was 6 years old. As I said, she's now 20, and she's been battling. I mean, she typically has about 10 to 20 seizures per day, and it's crazy. Yet she battles through, and it's got progressively worse. And so I was down there last couple of weeks. I literally just camped out. And we ended up sending her to this new kind of new age. She's not a doctor, but whatever the next level down from that is. And essentially, it's really taking those things that you're talking about, and that is taking medicine and blending that with nutrition. And she got me thinking in a different way as well. And she said, Mark, because so much of what my daughter's issues, what's going on or in her brain, which caused these different seizures. And so she said, think of your stomach as your brain. And it just resonated for me. So, I mean, we've been going through this massive cutout of all these different foods that, trying to restrict and pull back. But that's a whole nother story. But just, I think the parallel is that both of us had kids. We've both gone to what any parent would do for their kid. And because of that, we've really discovered that there are definitely triggers within nutrition that are causing the different ailments. So anyways, I just wanted to throw that in a little bit. Hey, I'm excited to introduce our new partner of the pod, Cascade Mountain Tech, an outdoor brand from the Pacific Northwest, which is where I'm from, that offers a great selection of trekking poles. They're incredible. Super coolers, camp chairs, LED lighting, and much more. Right now, Cascade Mountain Tech is offering 15% off your first order by using the code FindingYourSummit15. That is, FindingYourSummit15 when you check out at CascadeMountainTech.com. Let's get back to beaming. So what you now have discovered is really the inspiration around listening to this person back in New York talk about and making this comment about, wow, this lady really seems like she's beaming, number one. And then number two, you're having this experience with not only yourself, but with your family, and in particular with your kid who's got ADD. And you're seeing these dramatic results that are happening just based on tweaking the way you guys consume food.
Exactly. And Mark, thanks for sharing your story too. It's so much of my conviction is why I do what I do. And I think it will play into, the rest of the story that I'll end up sharing, but it's like the passion that has gone into the work that I do and my desire to really help people understand how much power we have over our health. and just becoming more mindful and it's not about perfection. I love wine and I love meatballs. Like, it's not that I don't enjoy and indulge in other ways, but it is about knowing how our bodies best thrive. And it is also, going back to Western medicine, challenging it a bit. I mean, my daughter was on antibiotics so many times as a little girl that for ear infections, she was allergic to soy and milk. Had we not been giving that to her and had we been tested for that, she wouldn't have needed the antibiotics. So it is something that I'm very passionate about, and I don't do it in a way that's preachy. It's a little preachy right now, but my way of teaching and educating is really by making this incredibly healthy, beautiful food and beverage, and how I share it with people. Because really the best way that we learn is to experience, right? It's by putting it in our body and going, wait a second, I feel amazing. I look amazing. And that's how we really learn. And that was really that moment of truth for me that said, well, I have to share this information. I've got to get it out there. And I can write a book and I can write blogs and I can get more content. But part of our problem is that we already have so much content, we're confused. And so me creating Beaming was, I need to share this with people. And I have no idea how I'm going to do it because I don't have a background in restaurants. I've never worked in one. I don't have a culinary background. I didn't have a nutrition background, although I did a lot of my own studies. I didn't have an MBA. I didn't have any of the qualifications, if you will, to create Beaming. But what I had was a passion and a mission that was so much stronger than any of my skills to do it. I mean, I had a tremendous amount of tenacity and I'm quite clever, but, kind of setting the stage for the love that went into how do I help people realize how much power we have over our health. And I wanted to create something that was not just for the person who already got it or the yoga mama. I wanted to speak to the whole family, and I wanted it to be through all ages and generations, because I have 3 kids, and my kids at the time when I created Beaming, I mean, they're 14, 15, and 21 now. So 8 years ago, they were young. And I wanted kids to come to Beaming instead of McDonald's, right? I wanted kids to be excited to come after soccer practice, to have acai bowl as opposed to some other junk food. So I really designed something that was speaking to the whole family and speaking towards what I wanted. And so that's how it came to be. So yes, I had no experience. I was also going through divorce in the middle of creating this new venture that was pretty crazy and an intense time. But the vision that I had and really my desire to educate people in a different way superseded all of the obstacles in my way.
Yeah, I get
it was an exciting, crazy time. Yeah.
Yeah. So now let's fast forward the clock just a little bit. And now you start Beaming. You're from San Diego. You get your first restaurants going. And I think you had maybe 8 or 9 of these things at its peak that were thriving.
Yeah. So, and the first one opened in Del Mar 7.5 years ago. It was wildly successful. It allowed me to raise money, open more cafes. We immediately went to LA and we opened 3 cafes in 5 months. And it was a really fun, exciting time. I mean, all the celebrities were coming. We were getting all the accolades in the magazines, and people were loving it. And people were telling me all the day, like, how it had changed their life. And that was that energy was so exciting. And it was a crazy time living in 2 cities, single mom, on and on. But, it was working. People were really getting my dream of people waking people up to this concept of food and medicine was working. Now, fast forward beyond that, I was raising money. I was getting investors. I had never done that before. I had raised a lot of money. And I had also a board of directors, which I had never had before. So I didn't understand about creating a board of directors. I was very naive in those aspects. And so, unfortunately, being naive in those aspects also ultimately cost me my company. And Beaming still exists now, and there are, I guess, 10 locations, and the company just merged with another company in San Francisco that I connected them with, and I think there's soon to be 19. But so the company still goes, but I had to go through a really horrible experience of losing a company that I loved so much and that I had put my heart and soul in creating, and finding and realizing I had business partners who did not understand business of what I was creating, but they didn't understand me. And we were very misaligned in what the company was doing. And I was creating out of a place of passion and abundance, and what you give out is what you give back. And, you start to talk that kind of language to a bunch of investors who are very much about the penny. And I was speaking Greek, in their mind, it was about the dollar. And for me, that has scarcity and negative energy in it. And so we were constantly battling. And ultimately, I got basically kicked out of my own company. And it was the worst thing I've ever been through in my entire life, because it was doing such beautiful. Yeah, it was my baby. It was the best thing. It was the most beautiful thing. And it was, I described it at one point as my child was kidnapped and I was muzzled in the closet and there was nothing I could do. And it was 5 against 1. It was the board against me. And it was awful. I honestly, it was the worst experience of my entire life, way worse than my divorce. There was times where I didn't get out of bed for days and I just cried. And it was more than just like losing the business. It was also like the idea as just a human, right? To not be understood, to not be seen. And that was what was happening for me, is that I was like, wait, don't you see? Like, this is not good. Like, don't do this. We're bringing such beautiful things in the world. Please don't take it to the dark side. Like, let's figure out how to like keep the good going. And I was speaking, I was not heard. And it was
so let me interrupt you. Okay, so I want to go back just a little bit. So you're out there, you're raising a bunch of money, you're creating this baby, which turns into a child, which turns into a person. Now you've got 9 or 10 stores, right? And you seem to be on a total roll. And so one of the things that I'm super empathetic with you on is that I did something similar. And what people who don't understand, who haven't done this, and that is the money, the raise game, is that all your energy is going into raising money when it should be going into, growing the business. And it's so to do those things. And then you put on top of that, you're going through a rough time, a very difficult time on a personal front, with your marriage falling apart. Yet at the same time, you guys are growing, expanding. So I can only imagine what life must have been to be you, because part of that too is that, it's not like you're building these 10 stores in a 3-mile square radius. You're driving up to LA all the time. Yeah. It's right between San Diego and up the corridor towards LA, and very, very difficult, a lot of road time. And you still have your 3 kids and they've got commitments and games and this and that. And so really trying to balance life. And then I started a company called Front Porch Classics. It was a gaming company out of Seattle. We ultimately raised about $11 million. And one of the things I got caught up with, even though we did need the money, is dancing with the devil, so to speak, in terms of venture capitalists. And kind of to your point, those guys have a bunch of investors on their end, and their bylaws state that every 3 to 5 years they have to turn companies over. And so many times they don't do things which are aligned with what is best for the company in terms of that particular growth. And so I butted heads, and ultimately I left, and it was no fun and very humbling, humiliating. This is something that you started, you're in the paper, a lot of people are recognizing you for this. I started this company up in Seattle, and now it's not yours anymore. You don't have any kind of control, and you're like, okay, what just happened? I can't believe, as you go into this free fall of how things played out. But that's life, and life has all kinds of different twists and turns. And I've got this summit model, which is this acronym for accomplishment, and one of the letters as the acronym go through is called traverse, right? And traverse is just all about when things in life hit you, what do? You have to zigzag. And I think you've done a beautiful job, even though at the time, and this is when you and I had a chat, I don't know, 6, 8, 10 months ago. And this was part of the exit. This is part of the free fall. And then in between then, and we're going to get into here in a few minutes, you were able to emerge out and really clear that negative weight off your back. You certainly can't fly high when you have those things on there. And what happens, I think, and tell me if you agree, that when you do shed that weight, when you do get all those negative aspects of like, why me, and all those things that come along with it, then you start to get very clear in your mind about the direction that you want to go. And then your creativity starts like leaping out of your brain on all these different things that you want to do. And it sounds like that's what you've done with this new company called Chroma.
Yeah, no, I love everything that you said, Mark. And I think, and my mind was going with you because there's so many, there is that part of like hitting bottom and the humility of that. And really, I was such when it first happened, it was like, no, this can't happen. This can't happen to me. This can't happen to the business. Don't you see what we're doing? And I was very much a victim in the beginning. And I really, I fought and fought and fought. And, as I reflect on it now, and as I reflected on it over time, I really had to learn accountability. I had to learn about what was my role in this. Right. And, what could I have done differently? And I want to use a disclaimer here because as an entrepreneur, we always are going to make mistakes, and I'm going to make them on my new one. And Jeff Bezos makes them on his, and, they cost billions of dollars. I mean, it's not possible to not make mistakes. Right. So we're all going to make them. But I think I learned a lot about some of my, even my childhood traumas, if you will, came back and haunted me in this, right? And so it came back to me in ways that I didn't even, like in blind spots, and that I had not addressed. And so we think about how whatever traumas might affect us in relationship, right, in our partnerships, but it comes back in business. And especially, I think, for women, because we just are ultra sensitive, but just in general. And so I had to really, it took a long time to understand how I got there and how I never get there again. And I will absolutely make new mistakes on my new businesses and next adventures and what have you. But God help me if I ever end up on the floor like I did with Beaming. And I lost everything. I mean, I guess I should say that I didn't lose my kids, I didn't lose my dignity, but I did lose all of my money. I lost, I was a week away from having to move in with my parents, in another city and leave my children. And I mean, we're talking, this was like 16 months ago. Like, this was not like, I am still coming out of having lost everything. And part of that was I held on too long. And, there's a part in our lives where we fight so hard for something, and whether that's a business, whether that's a relationship, but whatever it is that we're fighting. And sometimes it's just time. Sometimes there's no more fighting to do. And I think one of my big takeaways in this is that I didn't respect myself enough to say enough was enough, and continued the abuse of what I was going through. And that part makes me sad thinking and reflecting on it. It also has made me strong because I won't do that again. And it was a necessary part of my own kind of personal healing and everything that I went through to build myself back. But
let me just comment on that for a minute. I think part of that is being self-aware, and when you're in it, I think that's easy to say from the outside, but I think that's just all part of growth. And when you're a tornado and you're spinning so fast and things are out of control, it's hard to be self-aware. Something else you said
totally.
Which really resonates with me. And I went through my tough times. 7 years ago, I was going. You and I had this conversation, and I was going through my split, and it was not fun. And my dad died of a massive stroke. And one of the things I had to learn on the different companies that I had built is that I figured out what one of my greatest strengths was, which was never quitting ever. And that's really served me well in a lot of different things I've done through getting companies and pulling them out of the other side of trying to make an NFL roster, of climbing these crazy mountains around the world. But I also recognize, and this is the part where being self-aware, where I had to really come to the table, and that as I had to recognize my greatest weakness is knowing when to call it, just like you said. So my strength is my same strength as my weakness. And so I was just always battling myself. Like, I'm never going to quit, when I should be saying, I think it's time to call it, just to your point. And then the other thing that you said that was really interesting to me is, as you're going through this self-awareness, and again, I'm just relating this thing to my own situation, but I really, and this is something I'd never been, maybe just being, playing in a gladiator sport, but vulnerable, right? And it's just like, until you are willing to really release those, I don't know, negative connotations and be honest with yourself, you really can't go through the healing and get to your true greatness of what anybody can go through on whatever journey they're on.
1,000%, and there is, I've learned that vulnerability and really, just kind of digging and going to those uncomfortable spots and being open about them, right? And owning them and not being afraid to face them. And I wouldn't be who I am now if I wasn't willing to do that, but I also wouldn't be who I am now if I hadn't kind of hit bottom. And I'm sure, Mark, you feel this way, and I believe that there's so much gift in adversity, and as much as I don't like it, but I don't love it. But I'm grateful for the experience I went through, because I love who I am now more, as far as just a very kind of humble person who's really kind of come through a very difficult time, but also just I've gotten to deal with things that I didn't know that I had to deal with. I think that I have a different wisdom, both in business and in life. And as much as I wish that, things had played out differently, I'm also very grateful for it. And I do want to just acknowledge this too. Beaming is still a thriving brand. I still go to it. I went there today. I hate the fact that I have to pay for my own food that I created, but it's a different story. And I still support the brand that I created. I've had to learn to, it doesn't run the way that I ran it. It's not quite the same of what it was, but it's still a beautiful brand. And I'm still very proud of what I created and what I started and the movement that I was really significant in. And for that part, but I tell you, it took me a while to get there, because I had so much anger and resentment. And I think that's an important part of all of our healing, is that, again, whether we've been wronged, whether it's a bad breakup, whatever the situation, it's a friend, it's not until we come to just peace and closure that we can really heal. And it took me a long time to not loathe the people behind it, or not, look at Beaming and think, oh my God, how did they do this? Right. And once I came to peace inside.
Hey, this pod is sponsored by Laird Superfood. So many products to choose from your InstaFuel, your coffee, your tea, your smoothies. And I love the Superfood creamer and use the hydration powders like the beets, the coconut, the matcha, the turmeric to mix all into my 7 Summit smoothie. And it's so good. Log on to lairdsuperfood.com and get your 20% off when you use the code MARKP20. Okay? So get your Laird Superfood, and I guarantee it will help fuel your journey. So look, this is all called the process. And typically in a thing called process, there's a beginning, there's a middle, and there's an end. Okay. And so you went through the beginning. I think you and I caught up probably somewhere in the middle, and now you exited out the other side. You've got your head clear. You're free of the drama. And now you've moved on to a new company, which you are the proud new owner, the CEO. And it's just amazing to announce. And I'm so happy for you, called Chroma. So tell us all about Chroma. And one of the things I was reading about it is that I'm not sure if this is the tagline or just kind of the byproduct of some of the things that are included when you have these different incredible superfoods that we're going to get into. But energy, vitality, and positivity. Who would not want those things, right? With a little,
who does not want that?
Yeah, with a little hint of spicy passion. So tell me a little bit about what Chroma is all about and how you came up. I mean, obviously, it's an extension of what Beaming was in terms of a cafe, but this is something with a little bit different twist. So talk to us about what you're up to.
Yes. And Mark, and I first of all, thank you for all those sweet things you said. There's one thing I wanted to kind of close out where we were and where we're going. And because I'm excited to share Chroma, but I want to say one more thing that I think is an important piece of this puzzle that I really had to learn. And that is, I'm a creator. I've always been a creator. I always believed I could do anything. And I hit a point where I believed that maybe I couldn't. And I actually believe that maybe I thought, and I hit the point where I questioned everything about in my ability, which I never really had. And so what's so exciting for me in this kind of rebirth is that I had to go through all of those demons and all of that kind of inner turmoil. And that what was hard about it, though, was that I couldn't force the fixing of it. It wasn't like I could snap my finger and go, okay, now I'm ready to be back. I'm okay. I'm ready to like create again. I mean, it took me a couple of years. And, I will launch my new company, Chroma, will launch like literally in a couple of days. It'll be 3 years from the time that I exited beaming. It didn't, and it's been about 1.5 years in the making, but it took a good 1.5 years of healing that continued on for me to get to a point where I could even be creative again, that I could even like create from that place of passion that beaming was birthed from, to get to the point where I could go, I'm back and I'm whole, better than ever, and ready to like kind of bring what I love to share again. So I felt that was an important part to share, because it definitely was something that I was so frustrated, because I wanted it behind me. It was like, okay, you go through bad times. You're like, okay, I'm over it. Can we move on now? Mm-hmm. And I couldn't it couldn't force the healing process. Like it just wasn't going to happen because I snapped my fingers. So I mention that because I'm probably a lot of you listening can relate to that. And there's a part of patience that I had to learn that I share with anyone that might resonate with. And I share it because I am so freaking excited to bring this next creation to life, because it has this new kind of energy and zest of it, and all of that same love and passion that went into beaming, I get to bring into Chroma, because I am passionate about food and the power of superfoods and adaptogens, which of course I know you're going to ask me, can you talk about what those are?
Yeah, I have no idea. I saw that on the tagline. I have no idea what that means.
So they are, and you know what, Mark, I do remember in one of our first interactions, we talked about matcha and maca, and you wanted to understand the difference. And then we were supposed to have a matcha party, and we were supposed to have like a smoothie party with these things, which we still need to do. So superfoods and adaptogens, why I'm obsessed and crazy about them is because they're like the most powerful, foods on the planet, if you will, herbs, and such that they are this natural medicine. It's been around for thousands of years in Ayurvedic medicine, in Chinese medicine, and other, where we're kind of going back to the beginning of the conversation. Like, I want anything that's natural that can help me heal and thrive and have that vitality without having to take medication. And sometimes there's a place for it, but I think that there's all these other beautiful things just coming from Mother Earth. And of course, our fruits and vegetables and those kinds of things are critical and the most important. But these other things like superfoods and adaptogens, which they do include the blueberries and strawberries and that, but then there's these other things that, whether it's maca, chia seeds, flax seeds, quinoa, ashwagandha, which some people may have heard of, which is incredible for balancing hormones and help managing stress levels. And so those things are really, all of these things each have like a different healing. Like you might have heard of medicinal mushrooms, whether it's lion's mane, reishi, cordyceps. And that's kind of this new trend of these adaptogens that help with inflammation, help with our brain power, help with fighting disease. And it's these little tiny things of powerful magnitude. And, we're hearing about turmeric, right? Most people probably have had turmeric in some capacity, whether it was sprinkled on their food, or maybe you even had a golden milk latte, which is a turmeric latte, typically made with maybe almond milk or coconut milk. And why turmeric? Because it is anti-everything, anti-inflammatory, anti-cancer, anti-disease, antimicrobial. So these things can do so much good for us. If you're having aches and pains and you're having arthritis or whatever, turmeric can be great for that. So my love is playing with these crazy superfoods and adaptogens and turning them into delicious foods and beverages that we can consume. And knowing how busy we all are, myself included, most of us don't have enough time to figure out what these things are, let alone put them in combinations that can turn into something that is actually enjoyable. Because the truth is, most of these superfoods and adaptogens actually taste terrible. So it takes a lot of kind of mad scientisting to bring them together in a way that they're very effective, but they're also very enjoyable and flavorful.
So how do
and
you?
I geek out on that.
So tell me how you mix these things in. So I know one of the things that you do are these super lattes.
Yeah. So Chroma, we're launching Chroma with these very culinary inspired, I should say, super lattes. So what's a super latte? Let me also just kind of, a latte, just so everyone knows, it does not mean coffee. Latte is actually milk. And I'm dairy free, so any kind of latte that we do would be with coconut milk or an almond milk. So just kind of making that disclosure. But that's what latte is. So what I've created are these super enhanced creamy lattes. So for example, if you've heard of Bulletproof Coffee or something, I created one called it's a performance coffee latte. And it has coffee. I'm not opposed to coffee, although I think there's a lot of other ways to get natural energy that are maybe better for you. But I do think coffee serves a purpose. The one that I created has collagen, and that's great for your hair, skin, and nails, and your bone repair. MCT oil, which is really good for your brain. It has lion's mane, which is also great for your brain. It has rhodiola, which is really good for your brain. It has all these other enhanced superfoods, so that you could have a powder and add hot water, and it already has coconut milk in it, and it turns into this perfect latte. So from the comfort of your home or traveling with you, you can have one of these lattes. I happen to be really, really crazily freakish about matcha. And matcha is it's kind of very up and coming right now. And there's matcha cafes opening that are just matcha beverages. What matcha is, for those of you who don't know, it's green tea. But it's a very finely ground green tea, as opposed to a green tea that would come in a bag. It's like a fine powder, and it's 130 times the antioxidants of regular green tea. And we already know green tea is really good for us, and it's very anti-aging, and helps us build up our immunity. It actually helps boost your metabolism. It helps with your focus. It has something called L-theanine in it, which even though there's some caffeine in green tea, it actually creates a calming effect. So you can get the caffeine, but not the jitters and jolt that you might get with coffee.
Well, the green teas, as you know, are a fraction of what, I don't know what the exact percentage, 20-25% of what actual caffeine that you get in coffee would be, correct?
It's about, so matcha is higher because matcha is also, because it's this fine powder, it's loaded with chlorophyll, and it has, which is really, really great for detoxifying. So it has actually more caffeine than a normal green tea. It has about 30 grams per serving, whereas coffee has about 60. So it's about half. But because it has the L-theanine in it, it actually, you have the caffeine without the jitters. How Chroma came to be honest, was obviously I love superfoods and adaptogens, but I was a coffee drinker every day. I loved my coffee latte. I'd have almond milk with my coffee. I could not wait to wake up in the morning and have it. What the problem was for me is that it was starting to create a tremendous amount of anxiety, irritability, and make my hands would shake sometimes. And I would find myself sometimes snapping at my kids. And it was like, where did that come from? And I realized it was the caffeine of the coffee. But I didn't want to give it up. And I tried to go to decaf, but decaf coffee has all sorts of other chemicals and processing that goes into turning it into a decaf. So I knew that wasn't serving me. And so I needed an alternative beverage to start my day. But I still wanted some caffeine. And as I learned about matcha, I did what I always do, which I became obsessed and really wanted to understand it. But for anyone who's had matcha, a lot of people kind of don't love it at first because it can be very bitter. And most matcha on the market is really poor quality. And so it really matters, the quality, organic, ceremonial grade, those things do matter, but it's also very expensive. And like all of us, we don't all have time to try to learn about all these things. So that's what I do, is I learn about them for you and I put them together in a way that you can hopefully trust. I've already done the homework and research for you. I would love if the world was drinking matcha. That's how much I love it. And as I switched to matcha and really started to learn to love it, I felt so much better. And it's like literally my mind is sharper and I don't have the jitters, but I still get the caffeine that wakes me up and all the other great things. but I get all the other benefits of the matcha. What I was doing, because I travel back and forth to LA and I travel all over the country, is before I created Chroma, I was carrying like 10 superfoods with me back, in my suitcase, back and forth to LA, mixing it in my hotel room. So I'd have collagen and MCT oil and ashwagandha and maca and turmeric. And I'm blending it in the hotel room with all these powders and carrying my almond milk with me or whatever it was. And that's when the light bulb went off. And I thought, what if I turn this into a beverage that's all inclusive, single packet, and all I have to do is take that with me to the hotel. And so that's what I started doing for me, and then realized that other people wanted the same thing. So that's kind of how the birth, like so many ideas that we have, they start because of our own need, right? We it's something we want, and I couldn't find anything on the market that fit what I wanted, or I didn't like the flavor of it, or whatever it might be. I just didn't think it was of the quality that I wanted for me. And so I created it, which is how beaming started.
So let me ask you
this.
Yeah. So let me ask you this question. So just to be clear, so beaming is, and was, it still is around. So of course it is a cafe, and Chroma is, you would buy these different superfoods online in these different packets.
Yeah. So we launch in a couple of days. And it's going to be available online and at specialty markets like Erewhon in Los Angeles. It'll be, I can't disclose some of the other places, but it will be available in at some other kind of boutique retailers. But online would be through the Drink Chroma website. And we're doing all sorts of fun things to promote kind of our launch. There's 4 different lattes that we're launching with. We actually have 8, but we're going to so I gave you guys the sneak preview that there's more coming, but they're really fun and they're really delicious, and there's all different colors. That's why it's called Chroma, because there's green and there's yellow and there's brown and there's red and blue. And so, but each one has a different flavor and a different function. And it's the perfect, I created it because, the way we're looking at it is we all have a way that we start our day. We all have a ritual in how we start our day, whether it's coffee, warm water or lemon, maybe you drink, tea, whatever it is, but we have a certain way that we start our day. And I love waking up and cannot wait for my skinny detox matcha from Chroma that I drink every day. And so that's kind of its place. And then in the afternoon, there's that 2 to 5 window where we're kind of craving something. We're a little bit hungry. Maybe we're kind of dipping. We're looking for something that's a pick-me-up. Maybe it's caffeine, maybe it's not. But it's a great place to kind of fit into that part of your day too, because it's also very satiating. And if you're hungry, it'll probably curb your appetite too and give you a few hours for dinner. So that was really kind of the intent of how to fit it into your life, knowing that it was something that I really wanted in mind.
Yeah. And I want to make sure that everybody's very clear that if you go on and you're gonna actually purchase this stuff, Drink Chroma, spelled with a K, KROMA.com. So that is the key. And I think finally, like wrapping this thing up, let's go back to the first thing I said. The story to me is about overcoming adversity, certainly, and finding your way. It's all about redemption. I loved a month ago, I sat glued to the TV, which I rarely do, surprisingly, and watched a golf outing. And I sat there and we all saw how Tiger Woods came back through all this different personal issues, injury, his knee, his back, his shoulder. He hadn't won a major tournament in 11 years. Nobody thought he could actually pull this thing off, and he did. And it was so fun to just watch that moment and him really, I think, bask in the sunlight of all the things, the trials, the tribulations that he had been through to get to that point, because he had to live it and he had to go through public humiliation and everything else. Many of the different attributes and characteristics that you talked about through losing beaming and your personal struggles to get to where you are today, and your journey is still ahead. And, I like to talk about this podcast being finding your summits, because we have multiple summits, and, your one summit was beaming and that had a peak and it had a valley. And now you're, climbing back up the mountain right now, and you're headed towards this next Chroma peak. And I think it's going to be super successful. I know your drive. I know your ingenuity, and I'm really, really excited for you. But just kind of in closing here, your thoughts about what advice you would give to aspiring entrepreneurs who are trying to make their way and finding roadblocks here and there.
God, there's so many things. I think the roadblocks are inevitable. I think it's about being so close to your why, being so clear about what you're doing that no matter what, you overcome, right? And if you're not connected to your why, those roadblocks will get the best of you. And those of you who've listened to Simon Sinek, or if you haven't, by all means, go listen to his YouTube videos about what's your why. But your why is what drives you, and what's that passion that lights you up, that gives you that spirit to continue to motivate yourself every day, to overcome the adversity that is part of entrepreneurship. And I think so that would be the biggest thing. Another one I would say is intuition. I think, intuition is just in general in life is to really listen to that. I think reflecting on, if I had listened to my intuition about maybe some different partners or board members or different things along the way, I wouldn't have ended up where I am. As I raised money for my new company this time, I listened to my intuition. I did raise money again, but I did it with a much greater wisdom and really listening at that. What kind of people do I really want to have involved? And that's such an important part, because at the end of the day, if you end up having partners, if you end up having investors, and Mark, I know you know this, it's like you can get really close, right? And it's like, who are those people going to be when things are good? Everyone's good. But who are they going to be when it's not good? And are you going to come together and figure it out, or are you going to point fingers? And so if anyone's considering having other people in their business, I think it's really important to understand that level of commitment to do whatever it takes when the shit does hit the fan, because it's going to. So those are maybe some of my top ones.
No, I love that. And I especially love the first one about, having a very strong why about doing certain things. I talk about the pyramid of success. John Wooden had created 25 different building blocks of individual and team goals on ways that people can climb the ultimate pinnacle of whatever they are trying to do. And the very tippy top of that little rectangle or that triangle on that pyramid is competitive greatness. And that really gets back to, you need to love the process. And if you don't have a strong why, then you're not going to love the process. And if you don't love the process, it's going to turn into a New Year's resolution. And most of the times those things end up blowing up. People quit. And when things get tough, and that's what you can't do when you really are feeling strongly about something that you're really trying to do out there in the world. So on that note, look, I totally appreciate you coming on, sharing your story. I know we try to do this a couple different times, and I think, like all things, it's about timing and
timing is everything, isn't it?
Timing is everything, and really trying to really wait probably for the right time for you to merge strong again and ready to go out there and very excited about, your path forward. And I love what you're doing. And my last comments here are, every single morning I wake up and I have something called a 7 Summit smoothie. And in this thing, it's got all these things you're talking about: matcha, maca, turmeric, collagen, all this different stuff. It just, makes me feel like I've got a cape on my back.
I want to feel like I have something to do with that. Can I take a
listen,
point in our
I would call Lisa's 7 Summit smoothie. That's the only reason why.
I love
That's
it.
awesome. All right, look, where can people find you?
Thank you, Mark. Thank you so much, too. This has been so much fun, and I love your work too. And it's just a pleasure to have these conversations with you and to be able to share with everyone else.
But where can
they can find me? You find me. So Chroma, like you said, is a new company with a K, Kroma. The website is Drink Chroma, and you can find me on Instagram at Lisa Odenweller. And certainly would love to connect. If you have any comments, thoughts, questions, by all means, I love hearing from people. So, and I would love to, maybe be part of your new daily ritual with Chroma too. So thanks for all the support around that.
Absolutely. All right. Take it easy, and we will get caught up at another time to talk about where Chroma is in about 6 months to a year. Okay.
Thank you so much. Thanks so much for the opportunity. So much fun.
Absolutely. Take care. Hey, and thank you so much for listening to the Find Your Summit podcast. We are so glad to have you along for this journey. And if you enjoy the show, please tell a friend, share it on iTunes, spread it to the planet. We're looking to broadcast this to every person that is out there because, as you know, everybody has their own summit that they're going after. Okay, if you're looking to follow my journey, you can find that through my social links on markpattisonnfl.com. That's Mark, M-A-R-K, Pattison, P-A-T-T-I-S-O-N, NFL.com. So, until the next podcast, just remember, clear eyes, full hearts, and remember, it takes a little more to make a champion, so make it happen. Thank you. Bye. Hey, thank you so much for dropping in and listening to another amazing episode of Finding Your Summit. Truly incredible people doing spectacular things in life, and I hope you were inspired just like I continue to be. Look, I am super grateful that you came in and subscribed to this pod and would be more than appreciative if you gave the show a ratings and review on iTunes. Trust me, it matters. And then also go share it with your friends, of course. Okay, until next week, go do something great, and remember, it takes a little more to make a champion. Bye.